Welcome to Pario Magazine, where I chat with individuals who have a desire to create. Today, I'm joined by two of the creative minds behind The Lord of the Rings, a musical tale, which is set to arrive at Sydney's State Theatre in January. Welcome to Pario Magazine, Kevin Wallace and Frederica Drotos.
Delighted to be here. Thanks for the invitation.
I'm delighted to be here too.
So, we're here today to chat about the journey of bringing Middle Earth to the stage with The Lord of the Rings, a musical tale. Before we dive into that, do you want to give our audience a little intro as to who Kevin and Frederica are away from the stage?
Federica, who are you away from the stage?
I'm a, who am I away from the stage?
Yeah.
I'm not a very nice person. When I'm around the stage, I feel like my world becomes expansive, my worldview. I feel like I have a much larger capacity for kindness and creativity. And away from the stage, I'm annoyed by things like technology that fail us at the most important moments, like this one, where I'm trying to talk with my good friend Kevin and meet you and talk to the world and tell them about how fabulous this production is. And so, yeah, that was pretty long winded. I'll stop there.
And Kevin?
Well, I think the things that identify me are that I come from Ireland, and that I had a father who was really into football, into soccer, as we call it in Ireland, and was chairman of the local club. And my mother was loved theatre, introduced me to that. And I discovered about, I don't know, I'd been an actor for 12 years and I'm very happy being an actor. And then around 1990, the penny dropped for me. And I discovered through default by producing a play by Eugene O'Neill in a 40-seat theatre that actually I loved theatre more than I loved acting. And that I had attributes that I'm sure picked up from my parents, which were helpful and appropriate if you were going to produce in theatre. And then very fortunate to go to the right college to learn just how theatre works as a community. Went to a place called Rose Bruford College, which is very democratic, and where as first years we did all the dirty work, as it would be called, for the third year shows. So, we built the sets, we made the costumes. I was on the lighting board for the third year show at the end of my first year. I can still remember the amount of responsibility I had doing that in relation to that third year. And one thing that you learn in theatre is that everybody who is in part of the show is vital to that show. We all focus on the people who are on the stage, and particularly those named stars who can be on the stage. But I can tell you, the most junior ASM, assistant stage manager, who's part of a company, is just as important as the rest of us. It's a real collaborative experience. And then I often use the comparison. I'm an Arsenal supporter in soccer, and I often use the comparison between how the heck is it that some Saturdays those guys just instinctively know what to do and are brilliant, and some days they're all over the shop. And in terms of theatre, theatre's like the same thoroughbred process where you need everybody to be in the same mindset. They need to be focused. We can sometimes try as hard as we can, and it's a good show. And sometimes we're brilliant. And I think that the jeopardy that's involved in that, the excitement of the unknown, is something which is invigorating for audiences as well, because the experience that you have when you're in that theater is one that only the people in that theater on that day are having, and it's gone. It's a memory, and hopefully it's a cherished memory. So that's a very long answer, but that's who I am.
Yep. Yeah, I think that's the joy of live theatre. It's every show is the same concept, but can be slightly different every single time.
It is. The relationship between the audience and the actors varies every time. And we've just been doing this production in Chicago, and I watched the show probably at least 50% of the performances, because I'm interested in the evolution of performances, how actors discover things. And even though you'll have a creative process which concludes sort of officially on the opening night, what's fascinating is how the actors then take that blueprint, and through conversations they have off stage with each other, and what sometimes instinctively just happens out of a moment, on stage, so just enriches the performance. So by the time we got to the end of those weeks in Chicago, there were some beautiful touches of discovery that the actors had found in the relationships between, Frodo and Gandalf. I'm thinking in particular between Sam and Frodo, and also at the opening of the show, fantastic work that our Bilbo and our Frodo discovered in terms of establishing that friendship of uncle and nephew. Uh, yeah, so you're right. It's a totally organic experience. And if you have the right people with generosity of spirit and talent in the company, then you have this evolving, enriching experience for audiences.
I just wanted to say that that to me is one of the most compelling aspects of live stage, having come from a film background where you have the artist performances and the interaction with the director and all the people that Kevin mentioned that are backstage or behind the scenes, but it's locked, and everybody around the world sees the same film, whereas this, even everybody in one city in 1 month will see a different performance each night, and it's so exciting to see that evolve and to feel that energy between the actors and the participants as audience.
And
uh,
yet,
um,
Frederica,
yes.
Frederica, we also, you should speak of the background in terms of your company and the incredible films that company created and the brilliance of Saul as an
Yes.
independent producer. Because also we actually
Yes.
envy the fact that it is in the can as well, of course, because we go, wow, these guys create something of such perfection. And we envy the fact that you don't have to go out and do it again on a Saturday, having done it on a Friday. But, at the height
Right.
of that genre, that's where you guys have been for so long. It might be interesting for people listening and watching and hearing to know the background of the company.
So the company was a record company that was very successful with jazz and rock. Creedence Clearwater for one, Miles Davis for another, and with that success, they went on. Saul Zaentz, who was the record producer, went on to become a film producer, and his first film was One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest, which was quite successful, and to this day, I think is one of the most interesting films about America, mental illness, the way we deal with problems, situations, the way people handle things when they're confronted with difficult circumstances, and also comedy in black comedy in the midst of all of that. And with the success of One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest, he was offered by United Artists, the distributor, would he like to purchase the rights to The Lord of the Rings and The Hobbit? And being a voracious reader, which had led him to make One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest, Saul was absolutely adamant and thrilled and purchased those rights. Attached to that was Ralph Bakshi, and the animated film came out of that. And while it didn't have a lot of critical success or economic success at the moment, it was seen by Peter Jackson as a young boy, and we know that it influenced him heavily. A lot of the scenes in that movie came to be paid homage to in the Lord of the Rings film trilogy. Then Saul went on to make Amadeus and The Unbearable Ice of Being and The English Patient, and The English Patient led him to meeting the folks at Miramax and New Line Cinema, and that led to the film trilogy with Peter Jackson. So it's a really interesting weaving of abilities and I think lucky circumstances that brought us together. And then for Kevin to reach out to Saul and for Saul to see the genius in what Kevin was proposing to do um, with a stage musical, which is really kind of, when you think about it, pretty audacious to take 3 books, which are massive, that had been translated into 3 films, each at 3 hours long, and to say, oh, you know what I'll do? I'll make a musical and it'll be 3 hours long. And I'm going to cover the whole book. And Saul said, that sounds like a really great idea. And I think that's one of my favorite things. It's a great way to understand Saul's ability to not be dissuaded by things that other people would just scratch their head at or say, you're a lunatic, Kevin. You should take a hike. Instead, he said, no, let's do this. Let me know how I can help. Can I invest? What can I do? And now, 2 decades later,
Mm.
here we are at what I think is a beautiful encapsulation of that original vision.
Yeah, absolutely. And there was a moment in May of 2022 when I had breakfast with him at his hotel in London. And, I was quite younger then, 2002. And he put his hand on my shoulder and said, "Don't worry, we're going to do this." And he was true to his word because a year later we signed the agreement and then we got started on the creative process. And I think that in terms of the legacy that is Saul's legacy as far as the musical is concerned, and what will be mine and my partner William Bennett's legacy is the fact that we put together a writing team, which was a very complicated process of finding whom we believed to be the right composers to be able to speak, to give a musical language to Middle Earth, and finding Ea Roman I knew from my time working with Lloyd Webber's company really useful. But we discovered our colleague John Havu went out and searched. In those days, it was CDs, bought a ton of world music, and came back and said, "I think this crowd in Finland, Vartana, might be a wonderful voice for some of the worlds within Middle Earth," and indeed they proved to be. And Christopher Nightingale, whom I had worked with before as well, became the glue in terms of that third composer and main orchestrator. And interestingly, in terms of, I do take satisfaction that we introduced Matthew Warchus, who became co-writer with Sean McKenna on the work, and who, of course, directed the original production. We introduced him to Chris Nightingale, and I remember that sort of putting them both in a room and closing the door and thinking, I hope to God this works. And of course it did. And they went on. They've gone on to do all these other productions, including the mega hit of Matilda and the movie of Matilda. And I think they, and indeed Rob Howell, the designer, whom I had worked with many years before that when he was a very young guy, who did this brilliant design for the original production, they have become collaborators. And we have found one of the interesting things you find about this work, and you go, what, Frederica won't be surprised, but the company in Toronto, the company in London, the intensity of the process has meant that going through that process, telling that story is a uniting factor, which it isn't just any old job, it's a special one. And consequently, they used to gather, and the British guys still do, gather in a particular pub on a particular night to say hi to each other. And the Watermill Company, who were the first company with Paul Hart's production, which we are now here to talk about, that company can be seen posted a year later than when they played on Facebook, going out to restaurants and celebrating as a company. And we are so grateful to them because that original production back in 2006, 2007, 2008, that has these profound memories, and we have privileged memories of the work. We now have created something with Paul Hart, which is utterly different in terms of the principles of what he has put together. He came to us and he said, "Look, I want to do The Lord of the Rings in a 200-seat theater. And I know you might think I'm crazy, but I have an idea. I want everybody to be a hobbit, not just the actors. I want all the audience to be hobbits as well. And it's going to be in the company of hobbits." And that was intriguing. And also, we thought, okay, William and I said to him, go away, find a designer and come back with a concept, a design concept, which he came back with Simon Kenny's. And then they presented to William and to Frederica and myself. And it was like, it's a no brainer. They know what they're doing. They're incredibly talented. They have found a concept with intellectual rigor and wonderful creativity in terms of the language they want to use. And so, jumping forward, one of the things that an audience now sees and totally accepts is one of the hobbits going into battle playing a cello. Now you go, you got to be kidding. But the extraordinary thing is, in terms of actor musicianship, these are the techniques that are used to tell the story. And the way that those actors come out and meet the audience at the beginning of the evening, and the way that they interact as actors and then as hobbits, means that there's a bond created before the show even starts between the people who are telling the story and the people who are there to participate in the story. And then we all participate in the story. And it's so beautiful. Like in Chicago, I'm reminded, for example, of the guy who played Sam coming up and interfacing with the family, and these young kids' eyes just absolutely lighting up that they were actually able to talk to the guy who was playing Sam, and of course they're seeing him and Michael, and they're also seeing Sam, and then for the rest of the evening, he's my friend up there who's doing Sam, and so you have these bonds created, and what's so thrilling as well, because we do have this fantastic score, which was in the genesis of the production from 2000 and the 2000s, and to have that score right in the front now, played live, because every instrument is mic'd and every actor is mic'd, and to have that score played live, and also to have it interfacing with the telling of the story and the dramatic telling of the story, is Paul's real coup, and it is incredibly entertaining. And yeah, those three books fly by. And yes, we have, there's things we've had to merge. I know that the fans will go, whoa, you've merged Gondor and Rohan into the lands of men. And we're gonna, well, okay, we'll come along with that, because we know you have to get this thing done in one evening, not in three movies. But we also tick all the boxes. We do the Balrog, and we do the big ones, and we do our version of them. And in a theatrical way, the audience subconsciously goes, okay, they have no CGI. They haven't got $2 million to do on that 10-second sequence. Wow. So look what they've done with, and let people come and see it, but in terms of the ingenuity of theatrical design and direction and actors' ingenuity, we deliver the Balrog, we deliver Lothlorien, we deliver Rivendell, we deliver the Shire. All the big moments, all the big locations are there, and they satisfy in the context of theatre.
Brilliant. Yeah, I was going to ask, how is that process of adapting such a complex, detailed story down into a 3-hour musical, but then also transforming it into that musical format? Was there a lot of changes that needed to be made to suit the medium?
I know that Sean McKenna, the principal writer, has some extraordinary number of drafts, like 135 or something, from when we were writing back in 2003 through to 2006. And it's a negotiating process that there was the commitment was to tell the story of the hobbits, but also to cover all the main events. So it's interesting when you read the books. There are periods in the books that are like a trip, where Tolkien goes off and we have these abstract sequences which aren't actually dramatic and which don't necessarily move the story forward, but which are very insightful on a very, very deep level. Now, they can actually be set to one side when you're telling a drama.
Mhm.
So it was distilled down in that way. And then practical decisions like, look, we're going to have one lands of men. We can't do all those battles. We can't split the story so many ways. We have to actually focus on the fellowship and focus on the events that are primary to the evolution and of the fellowship and getting that ring to Mordor. Um, and I think Frederica would be able to speak to, because she, knowing the material as deeply as she does, analyzing why this works, as opposed to trying to put every page of the book onto the stage. What do you reckon, Frederick, on
That's a
that?
brilliant question, and I wish I had a brilliant answer to it. It's my best my best response is that each of the beats that need to move the story along are addressed in a way that feels fulfilling. It was only, this is embarrassing, but I'm going to admit it, that it was only about the seventh time I watched it in Chicago this past summer when I realized, oh my God, my favorite moment, my favorite character, Eowyn, I am no man, making that profound move does not exist. In fact, Eowyn is not even in our cast. And it was such a revelation to me that I hadn't missed her, even though I am so enamored of her in a way. I mean, Galadriel, of course, is amazing, and Arwen in her own way. But Eowyn has always stood out to me to be so brave and humble and taking a back seat, but doing what she knows she needs to do, even changing her identity and riding off into battle against, all odds and repercussions and such, and that she wasn't there. But somehow the ring gets to Mordor, and that worked for me. Feels that there's something really genius about the original script, and then the way Paul has kind of tweaked it, twisted it just a little bit, that the hobbits really are carrying the show,
Mm.
and they're picking up along the way some hitchhikers that help them deliver their, make their mission accomplished. So when Kevin says I would know, I don't really know, but I know that it works. And I would
Yep.
love for somebody who's a much more analytical mind than mine to go through and try and figure out the nuances of why. From my mind, which is very much a gut instinct, it's that because we are carried along with the emotion, that we
Mm.
become these hobbits, that we know we have a mission to accomplish and we're going to do it. We just know, we know what we have to do. We don't know how we're going to do it. And we just sort of trust in the step by step that Gandalf kind of said, just go. You just got to go.
And we have a saying that if you're clear in the first 5 minutes and the audience understands the rules, then they're with you. You need to be clear. And we're really clear. We're going to talk to
We're
you, we're going
very
to hang
clear.
out with you, and then we're going to tell the
Party
story,
with you.
party with
Yeah.
you.
Yeah.
And these guys as hobbits are going to tell the story in their way, what's important to them about the story, and that's what the journey that they go on. And it's as simple as when children are playing and say, okay, I'm going to be the mommy and you're going to be the daddy and he's going to be the doctor, and this is a hospital now, and we're still in the living room, but okay, the deal's done. Okay, that's what we're playing. Okay, got it. So
Yeah.
on we go, and then everybody buys in. So by the time we get to the battle, and Merry is in there, and Pippin, and they're on their cellos, and they're fighting with their accordions and all the rest of it. We buy into it. That's the deal. You've told us
Yeah.
where they're going to go. Um, and yeah,
Yep.
Paul is a
And we all come
genius.
out weeping.
We do. Yeah, we do. Yeah. Um, we love those hobbits so much. And when Frodo has to sacrifice himself for the better of his community, that is such a heartbreaking moment. Um, But boy,
Hmm.
does it speak to our world in terms of what we all need to
Yeah.
be as individuals and have the courage of our convictions sometimes when the
Yeah.
tide is flowing against us.
Mhm.
Yeah.
So then, as we look ahead to the Sydney shows, what can people expect from these performances, and how is everybody feeling ahead of the season?
Well, I know that I can speak for myself, exhilarated by the talent that's come through. Some of it out of the woodwork in terms of the actor musicianship, some of it in terms of, stars of your theatre world. I'll tell you one thing though, it's an ensemble piece, and we are really keen, and Paul has the capacity to understand somebody's humanity and their spirit when he auditions them, and he has found a community of actors who are clearly absolutely exhilarated to be given the responsibility of this title. What a privilege every time we do it, that we have the opportunity to tell one of the greatest, if not the greatest stories ever written by a human being. And that is an opportunity, a responsibility, and a challenge. And I think that's what makes life satisfying for those. And it makes the whole thing satisfying, whether you're an ASM or you're on the lighting board or you're an actor in this show. Wow, we've been given the opportunity to tell the Lord of the Rings. Well, we're going to do a hell of a good job, and we're going to do it well every time. We know that they're going to have an extraordinary experience when they work with Paul and with Anjali Mira, the choreographer and movement director, and with Mark Aspinall and with the rest of the creative team, because we know that this creative team is an absolutely first class team at the top of its game. And that's fantastic for actors as well. So the combination of all that talent exploding onto the stage at the state, that's what's going to thrill the audience with this brilliant story in a way which is creative, exciting, surprising, emotionally powerful. They're going to go home happy.
And I share Kevin's exhilaration because I've watched now the evolution from the Watermill to Chicago, seen the casting choices for Australia, and realized that, just as Kevin said, this team of creatives know exactly how to welcome these members in and help orient them. They're the next class. They're the freshman class that will soon
Mm,
be the experts on stage to bring this to the audience. And it is really phenomenal to watch it happen, not over weeks or months, but over days, hours and days, so that they quickly become a fellowship.
mm.
It's a privilege, and all I had to do was make sure somebody signed an agreement, and I get to participate in this privilege. So I'm probably one of the luckiest people in the world.
No, no. Frederica, needless to say, is being very modest in terms of the feedback that she gives, in terms of textual changes, chemistry of scenes. Um, we have great conversations after we watch the show together. And fortunately, as we have joked, we have similar taste. So when William and myself and Frederica get together, we have a consensus, and then we will all have our individual insights as well, which just make those conversations all the more interesting. There's nothing better than getting together after a performance with a glass of red and having those conversations.
Wonderful.
I concur.
For our audience, the show opens on January 7th, 2025, and will run through until February 1st. Tickets are now available at lotronstage.com. Thank you both for taking the time to chat with me. But finally, where is the best place for people to support you both and track the creative journey moving forward?
Come and see the show and see where the story is now. And then, as this production travels, join the band of fans whom we know and who are friends, who have traveled, some of them from Toronto to London to the Watermill to Chicago, and will be ongoing. And I'm not kidding. I've actually met
No.
those people who are
Yep.
then traveling to New Zealand and then on to Australia. That'd be a bigger band every time that we play a new city.
It's a great party. Come join. You won't regret it.
Awesome. Thank you both so much and good luck with the season.
Thank you.
Thank you. It's a pleasure.